Most people aren't tuning you out because they dislike you. They're not dismissing your words because they're rude or cold. The reality is more subtle, more uncomfortable to admit. They're ignoring you because of how you talk. You know that sinking feeling, speaking in a room and watching eyes glaze over, sensing that what you're saying just floats in the air instead of sinking in. You feel invisible, like every word bounces off walls instead of touching anyone's heart. And here's the hard truth. It isn't your ideas that are pushing people away. Your ideas may be sharp, meaningful, even life-changing. It isn't your worth. You already carry value simply by showing up as you are. It isn't even the sound of your voice, whether it's soft, booming, or anything in between. What actually makes people turn away is something much quieter, harder to pinpoint. It's the delivery. It's the energy that comes with your words. It's the intention you bring when you open your mouth to speak. Those things, tone, presence, intent, carry louder than the words themselves. And when they're off, even the best message gets lost. But the moment you begin to see this, the moment you realize communication isn't just about what you say, but about how you say it, something shifts. You stop chasing volume. You stop chasing clever phrases. And you start stepping into presence. That's when everything changes, because people finally stop tuning you out and start leaning in. There are small habits we all carry that we don't even notice, little patterns in the way we talk that, without meaning to, push people further from us instead of drawing them closer. That's what I want to uncover with you today. There are 5 of these hidden communication habits, and they're subtle. You won't always catch yourself doing them, but others feel them instantly. And here's the thing. When you learn how to shift even one of them, everything changes. People stop drifting away mid-conversation. They stop politely nodding while mentally checking out. Instead, they lean in. They engage. They actually want to hear what you have to say. Think about what that does for your life. When people listen, your relationships feel lighter. Arguments don't spiral the same way. At work, your ideas don't just float around the meeting table, they land. And in your own mind, you stop carrying that weight of wondering, why doesn't anyone hear me? You walk into conversations with a new kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't come from talking louder, but from speaking better. And if that sounds like the shift you've been waiting for, don't just watch this passively. Lean in with me. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's take this journey together. Because by the end of this, you'll see communication in a way most people never do. And once you do, you'll never go back. Let's begin with something so subtle, you might miss it if you're not paying attention. Most of us talk because we want to be heard. We want proof that our thoughts matter, that our presence matters. We want someone to look at us, nod, and silently say, I see you. I hear you. You're valid. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's deeply human to crave recognition. But when being heard becomes the only reason you speak, something begins to shift in the wrong direction. Without realizing it, you stop noticing how the other person is experiencing the moment. You stop watching their body language, stop catching the little signals that say they're overwhelmed, distracted, or maybe just not ready. Instead of talking with them, you start talking at them. Instead of opening a dialogue, you deliver a monologue. You vent, unload, spill, without asking if there's space for it. And here's the thing. People don't shut down because they don't care. They shut down because they don't want to feel like a wall you throw your words against. Nobody wants to sit in a conversation where they're reduced to a container for someone else's emotions, with no chance to actually participate. Over time, they begin to lean back, to smile politely, to go quiet. Not because your words don't matter, but because they're drowning in them. The real shift happens the moment you pause and ask yourself a simple question. Am I here to connect, or am I just here to express? That pause changes everything. Because when your goal is connection, you naturally make room. You let silence breathe. You ask questions. You leave space for someone else's voice to rise beside yours. And people feel that difference instantly. The ones who are remembered, the ones who are listened to, aren't always the loudest in the room. They're the ones who know when to step back, when to lean forward, when to listen, and when to speak. They're the ones who make others feel seen in the process. And when you do that, when you stop speaking just to unload and start speaking to connect, you'll notice people leaning in, not out. This one slips in so quietly that most people don't even notice it happening. You think you're just talking, letting something out, maybe even healing by sharing. But without realizing it, you keep circling back to the same story. The same complaint about your boss that you've told at least a dozen times. The same memory from your childhood you've rehearsed so much it feels like a script. The same frustration with your partner, your parents, or your life that spills out again and again. To you, it feels like venting. It feels like you're processing, like you're finally getting it off your chest. But to everyone else, it starts to sound like a loop on repeat. At first, they nod, they listen, they sympathize. But by the fifth time, the 10th time, they've already memorized every line. And at that point, they don't tune out because they don't care about you. They tune out because they already know the story by heart, and there's nothing new left for them to receive. That's when your words, instead of landing with meaning, blur into background noise. You might think you're being ignored, but really, people are just protecting themselves from being pulled into the same cycle again. Repetition without reflection isn't connection, it's stagnation. So how do you break out of it? You stop and ask yourself two questions. The first, what do I actually want to come from sharing this? Do you want comfort, advice, a solution, or just a moment of empathy? Naming that gives your words direction instead of letting them spin in circles. The second, what part of this story have I not taken responsibility for yet? Because if you're retelling the same struggle, it's a sign that some part of you is still waiting for someone else to fix it. Repetition usually means you're stuck in the same chapter, reading the same lines over and over again. Growth is when you pick up the pen and start rewriting. And when you speak from a place of growth, when you share how you've shifted, how you're learning, how you're moving forward, suddenly people stop hearing noise. They hear wisdom. They don't just hear the pain. They hear the transformation. And that's the story everyone leans in for. Vulnerability has become one of those words we all admire. People say, be real, be authentic, share your truth. And it's true, vulnerability can be magnetic. It creates closeness, it builds intimacy, it shows courage. But only when it's offered in the right way, at the right time. Because just like anything powerful, when used recklessly, it can do the opposite of what you want. Think about it. You meet someone new, and before trust has had a chance to grow, you're already laying everything on the table. You go too deep too fast. You talk about your darkest moments, your most painful memories, your deepest wounds. And while you may believe you're being honest, what the other person feels is something different. They don't feel connected, they feel responsible. They feel like they've suddenly been cast as your therapist, your savior, or your emotional sponge. And that weight can make people pull back, not because they don't care, but because the bond hasn't earned the strength to carry that much yet. That's where emotional pacing comes in. Vulnerability is like water. It nourishes in the right dose, but it floods when there's too much all at once. So instead of opening the dam on someone you barely know, try starting small. Share a challenge you've worked through. Talk about a belief you once held and how you've outgrown it. Watch how they respond. Do they lean in with their own story? Do their eyes light up in recognition? Or do they quietly shift, giving signals they're not ready to hold something heavy? Trust doesn't arrive in giant leaps. It builds like layers of paint, one coat at a time. Each layer makes the bond stronger, more durable, more able to hold weight. And when you pace your vulnerability, when you let the trust grow naturally instead of forcing it, your truth feels different. It stops being a burden that makes people step back. It becomes a gift they're honored to hold. That's the power of sharing wisely. It's not about being less open. It's about being patient enough to let openness grow roots. And when you do, the connection it creates is deeper, safer, and far more lasting. We've all caught ourselves doing it. You're in the middle of a conversation, the story is unfolding, and your brain lights up with something to add. Maybe you think you know exactly where the other person is headed, so you jump in and finish their sentence for them. Maybe you're so eager to share your experience that you cut them off mid-thought. It doesn't come from malice, it comes from excitement, from wanting to be part of the exchange. But here's the problem. That tiny interruption sends a bigger message than you realize. What the other person hears isn't your enthusiasm. What they hear is, my thoughts are more important than yours. It tells them, even unintentionally, that your voice carries more weight than theirs. And when that happens enough times, people learn. They learn not to finish their stories. They learn to shrink their sentences. They learn to keep their deeper thoughts to themselves because somewhere along the line, you've shown them they won't get the space to say it out loud. And so they stop sharing. Not because they don't want to connect with you, but because they don't feel like they'll ever be fully heard. And isn't that what most of us are longing for anyway? To be able to spill out our words without worrying